seeking immunity. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn is ready to be questioned on Trump-Russia ties, under one condition: Gorsuch opposition, how Democrats are trying to block the president's Supreme Court pick. Women of courage. We speak to a Catholic sister about living in war-torn Syria and the honor she received from America's First Lady. And meeting with the Pope Emeritus. Vatican correspondent Mary Shovlin talks about her experience with Benedict XVI and how the former pontiff is preparing for his 90th birthday. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, March 31st, 2017. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn says he's willing to talk Russia and the 2016 campaign, but there's a catch. He's asking for full immunity first. It's a move that has the full backing of his former boss, President Donald Trump. President Trump tweeting this morning, Mike Flynn should ask for immunity in that this is a witch hunt. He blames the media and Democrats. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer says the president wants Flynn to testify in front of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees, which are investigating any ties between Trump associates and Russia. Spicer says Americans should be more worried about leaks taking place.
There is a concern that people misused, mishandled, misdirected, classified information, leaked it out, spread it out, violated civil liberties, and the potential that that happened should concern every single American.
I do think it's sort of this witch hunt.
Senator Rand Paul agrees, and he also dismisses the controversy swirling around House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes. The New York Times has reported 2 administration officials secretly helped Nunes examine intelligence information at the White House last week.
The fact that they may have met in a secure room in the White House doesn't make it wrong. It actually makes it noble that someone is trying to clear up the mess of who spied on General Flynn, because no one's denying that General Flynn was spied upon by the Obama administration.
Congressional investigators are brushing off Flynn's offer, saying it's too early in their probe to discuss a deal. The president will have to pay $25 million to settle lawsuits over his now defunct Trump University. A judge approved the agreement this afternoon, ending nearly 7 years of legal battles with customers who claimed they were misled. The president vowed to never settle, but said after the election he didn't have time for a trial. Republicans may need to make historic changes to Senate rules to confirm Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch. That's because Democrats are gaining support to block his nomination with a filibuster. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi has a preview of the potential showdown next week. Jason?
Why, Senate Republicans have said for weeks that they'll do whatever it takes to get Gorsuch confirmed. Now, a rule change would derail Democrats' attempts at a filibuster. But there's another option to get Gorsuch confirmed, which doesn't require changing the rules.
Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer warns Republicans.
We should change the nominee, not the rules.
But Republicans blame the Democrats for entering uncharted territory.
No Supreme Court justice has ever been stopped with a partisan filibuster.
By current Senate rules, Democrats need 41 votes to block the nomination with a filibuster. At last count, they already have 35.
One party can talk themselves out to death, essentially, and requires 60 votes to overcome.
Or Republicans could launch the so-called nuclear option, changing the rules to allow a simple majority to approve Gorsuch. But Heritage Foundation's Rachel Bovard says there's another option, using a Senate rule created by Thomas Jefferson, which would allow Gorsuch to pass with just 51 votes.
Basically says that no senator can speak more than twice on a pending question.
So using the two-speech rule could lead to Gorsuch on the Supreme Court.
But at the end of the day, if the Republicans keep the Senate open, 24 hours a day, you're really forcing those Democrats into a tough position. I mean, their members are exhausted, they're cranky, they know they're going to lose.
And all 52 Republicans are united behind Judge Gorsuch.
There was no better qualified person.
And now 2 Democrats are voting for Gorsuch. North Dakota's Heidi Heitkamp and West Virginia's Joe Manchin.
We have a responsibility to have a working judiciary branch of government. And if you don't have 9 members, you're in serious problems.
Manchin was hit by ads like this one.
Joe Manchin has a chance to stand with West Virginia voters.
A conservative group is spending $10 million to support Gorsuch, targeting Democrats in states Trump won.
Senator Donnelly likes us to believe he does what's right. Now he can prove it.
The Senate Judiciary Committee will vote on the Gorsuch nomination Monday. The full Senate is expected to vote later next week. Wyatt?
Correspondent Jason Calvi reporting from Capitol Hill. Thanks, Jason. Gay rights activists and privacy advocates are both angry with the repeal of North Carolina's bathroom bill. It required transgender people to use the bathroom corresponding to their sex at birth. Tammy Fitzgerald, Executive Director of the NC Values Coalition, joins us via Skype from Raleigh. Tammy, why is this compromise deal angering advocates on both sides of the issue?
Well, the deal yesterday repealed House Bill 2. Straight and forward. And that angers a lot of people on the right because a lot of people thought House Bill 2 was an excellent solution to a problem created by the city of Charlotte when it passed an overreaching ordinance last year. But people on the right are also a little bit upset because it appears that North Carolina has failed families by giving in to hypocritical bullies like the NCAA and billion-dollar corporations. And then they're just not sure that this new law is enough to protect privacy and safety in bathrooms. There's some question about that. But people on the other side of this issue, on the left, are upset because it continues a prohibition for cities and counties across North Carolina to pass local ordinances that would affect employment and public accommodations. And that lasts for almost 4 years till December of 2020. And I think then they're upset because the new law did not repeal outright HB 2 and then not replace parts of it. So the replacements are what they're unhappy about. They wanted the repeal, but they're upset about the replacements.
So then what do you think this means on a practical basis, like particularly for schools?
Well, it's a little unclear. The leaders in our state are saying that it will go back to the common law principles that were in place before Charlotte's ordinance. Unfortunately, things have progressed since that time that the ordinance was passed in Charlotte. And now we have a situation where we have a national campaign to impose transgender rights on the country, starting with North Carolina. We're at the tip of that spear. And so I do not know if it's enough to preempt cities and counties from passing bathroom ordinances without also passing a statewide bathroom privacy law. And so we believe that every North Carolinian deserves to have their privacy respected in intimate facilities like locker rooms and restrooms. And we're just not sure that new law does enough.
Yeah, still a lot of questions in terms of how this will affect lawsuits as well, and obviously how this will affect the NCAA potentially banning sporting events as well, or not bringing sporting events to North Carolina. So Tammy Fitzgerald, Executive Director of the NC Values Coalition, thanks so much for talking with us. We'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. A priest kidnapped earlier this week is released from captivity. The bishop of the Diocese of Tampico, Mexico, says Father Oscar Lopez Navarro is doing well. His captors had demanded a high ransom, but it's not known how much, if any, was paid. The bishop is quoted as saying, "It's not the amount of money that matters, but the amount of prayers from the world." Police arrest the former president of South Korea, Park Geun-hye. She's accused of leaking state secrets, abusing her position, and bribery. A judge says the court feared the former leader would destroy evidence. Park was impeached after months of widespread protests over a corruption scandal. Protesters clashed with police in Venezuela after the country's Supreme Court voted to deprive parliament of all functions. Opposition parties in the country view the move as an attempt to install a dictatorship with President Nicolas Maduro. The United Nations top human rights official is calling on the High Court to reverse its decision. A car blast in Pakistan kills 24 people and injures 100 more near a Shiite Muslim mosque. A group related to the Pakistani Taliban claims responsibility for the suicide attack. The bombing came hours after the country's president signed a bill removing the last hurdle for reviving military courts to bring terrorism suspects to trial. Pope Francis urges more support this week for Iraqi civilians caught in the midst of battle against ISIS. On Capitol Hill, New Jersey Representative Chris Smith is asking Congress for emergency aid for survivors of the genocide.
About 3 years now, I've been trying to get the Obama administration to provide humanitarian assistance to the internally displaced persons, the refugees who happen to be Christians and some Yazidis who have been bypassed, shown gross negligence and indifference by the previous administration. I went over to Erbil late last year, right before Christmas, met with many of these individuals, the priests and the bishop, Archbishop Werda, who has provided private sector assistance, including from the Knights of Columbus. But where is the U.S. government? Nowhere to be found. So I've introduced a bill that will do two major things. One, it'll provide humanitarian assistance to those who have been treated so foolishly by the U.S. government and with such gross indifference, to get humanitarian aid to them, and that would be in Erbil. Secondly, it would also require that we start gathering actionable information so that prosecutions against people, ISIS and others, can go forward.
In an op-ed in the Washington Post, the head of the Knights of Columbus says the president and Congress must help victims of the genocide in the Middle East. Carl Anderson writes, the new administration should begin to right this wrong and chart a different course. It can quickly end this de facto discrimination, and in doing so, help save ancient ethnic and religious communities that otherwise could cease to exist. Pope Francis visits a school for the blind in Rome in what he calls Mercy Friday. It's an initiative that began during the recent Jubilee Year of Mercy. The school cares for nearly 40 adults and elderly and 50 kids with impaired vision. The Holy Father also made a donation to the center. Some members of our Rome office had the opportunity of a lifetime today. 6 members of the EWTN Rome Bureau met with the Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI in the Vatican Gardens after his daily rosary with his personal secretary, Archbishop Georg Ganswein. Our Vatican correspondent Mary Shovlin was there and joins us now with the details. Mary, what an incredible opportunity. How did this meeting come together?
We had asked, some of the members from our office had asked if a delegation from the office could go and meet with Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI on the occasion of the 1 year since Mother Angelica's passing, and he graciously accepted. So about 6 of us were allowed to go meet with the Pope Emeritus after he prayed the Rosary in the Vatican Gardens, as he does each afternoon. He took time to meet with us along with his personal secretary, Archbishop Georg Ganswein, and he took time to greet us one by one.
And when you met with him one-on-one, what did you speak with him about?
Well, it was really nice. We told him about all the work we do, and he said, "Oh, a lot of work. That's a lot of work. You're doing a lot." And then it was nice because one by one he talked to us, each one of us, about our families, those who are married, those with children, and how many children. And so on, and just personal questions. And I was able to even talk to him about the thesis I had written in college on Karol Wojtyła and his thoughts on Humanae Vitae. I was very interested in that. We talked about that for a few minutes. Very personal, very touching, felt like family.
Well, the Pope Emeritus' 90th birthday is coming up April 16th. How is he doing? How's he feeling?
White is doing great. He's slowing down as any 90-year-old would, I would have to say, but so happy, so joyful. He took us, each one of us, by the hand and talked to us, looked right into our eyes, asked us questions, followed up. And so he was very present, very there, very sharp, very still much a pastor. What a man of prayer, just to be there watching him pray. First, we were off in the distance watching him pray, and then being able to speak with us like that one by one. Truly unforgettable.
Well, do we know how the Pope Emeritus is going to celebrate his birthday?
What we know at this point is that because his birthday, April 16th, falls on Easter Sunday, he doesn't want to make a big fuss. That much we know. That's what we were told. And Sunday will be a normal Easter Sunday, I think, in the afternoon. We could probably expect that Pope Francis would go pay him a visit there at the monastery for his birthday. But the real celebrations for his birthday will take place on the Monday after Easter. Delegations coming from Bavaria. The Prime Minister of Bavaria will be there. And so there'll be a moment of celebration with people from his homeland coming down. His brother will be here to celebrate with him as well.
But not wanting to make a big fuss about it. That sounds like Pope Emeritus Benedict for sure. Mary Shovlin, EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent. Thanks so much for telling us about it, Mary.
Thank you, Wyatt.
Coming up, Republican report card.
We knew at the end of the month it would either be good for the GOP or bad, and right now it's bad.
Where the party and the president go from here. And pro-life advocate.
And I saw the impact of that abortion on her.
Former presidential candidate Carly Fiorina speaks out about abortion. One of the country's leading experts on tax reform is eager for Republicans to address the issue, but not until they fix health care first.
Until we get rid of Obamacare and the $1 trillion of taxes in Obamacare, it's much more difficult, maybe impossible, to actually pass the tax reform bill that the president wants, that the House and the Senate want, and certainly taxpayers need and want.
Grover Norquist and other conservative and pro-life leaders met Speaker Paul Ryan yesterday to discuss the Republican health care bill. March was not the best month for Republicans. Lauren Ashburn got an update from a journalist who's been following all the action on Capitol Hill.
Joining us now is Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief at The Hill. Welcome back.
Hey, Lauren.
You had this prediction a month ago, and you said at the end of February, you wrote an article saying March is the biggest month for GOP in a decade.
Yep.
Was it?
It was, and it didn't go well for Republicans. They really needed to capture momentum. Everything in Washington and politics is momentum. And with health care, Republican leaders thought there's no way conservatives are going to vote against a repeal measure. And they couldn't get that done. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't turn this around, that the White House and President Trump can't turn it around. But they're lacking momentum now, going into another difficult task of tax reform and maybe transportation. So we knew at the end of the month it would either be good for the GOP or bad, and right now, it's bad.
According to the Democratic poll, Public Policy, Paul Ryan sunk to 21% approval rating, lower than Donald Trump. Now, you can take or leave that poll in and of itself, but how much do you think this loss hurt Paul Ryan politically?
Oh, very significantly. I mean, he is wounded right now, and that's why it's very hard to become Speaker of the House and eventually run for president. We saw Newt Gingrich do that. He didn't succeed, but he did okay. But being Speaker, you're never going to be popular. And the right doesn't like Paul Ryan. Conservative media has gone after him. And of course, the left doesn't like him. So that explains it. And this was Paul Ryan's bill on health care, and it didn't happen.
And it didn't work.
Yep.
And now you have President Trump saying the Freedom Caucus will hurt the entire Republic agenda if they don't get on the team and fast. We must fight them and Dems in 2018. There seems to be a little bit of confusion. They're not on the same page. Yeah. They're going back to health care. They're going to tax reform. Right. Speaker of House Ryan met with conservatives, GOP conservatives, and tax reformers, and they were urging him to move forward on health care.
Yeah, and that's why it shows you that Republicans are struggling right now because they don't know what to do next. Go back to health care, move on to tax reform, and that's the problem. And I think that's why it was such an important test for Trump that he was going to get this health care bill, at least through the House, so he could crack the Freedom Caucus, and the Freedom Caucus stood firm.
Which one do you think is going to happen? Let's do a little prognosticating, which I hate to do, but because then you have to say you're wrong, which is
I've been
nine
wrong
times
before, yes.
9 times out of 10. That's
Yes.
what you have to say. Tax reform or health care, which will get passed first?
I don't think either one is going to pass, honestly. But I do think that they can cut taxes because that's the thing that they unify around tax cuts. But reforming the entire tax code, where there's winners and losers, hasn't happened since 1986. There's a reason: massive lobbying fight. So I think eventually they'll go to tax cuts and they'll get something done on tax cuts.
Okay, Bob Cusack, always great to have you, editor-in-chief of The Hill. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Lauren.
Former presidential candidate Carly Fiorina opens up to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly's Catherine Zeltner about how she became pro-life after a series of experiences, including taking her friend to a Planned Parenthood clinic for an abortion.
It was a callous experience, and I saw the impact of that abortion on her, not just physically, but emotionally and especially spiritually. Honestly, she was never the same since.
Fiorina also talks about her battle with cancer. You can see the interview tonight on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly at 11 p.m. Eastern, right here on EWTN. It will re-air Sunday morning at 10. Up next, International Women of Courage. One of this year's award winners joins us in studio to share her story. And Super Bloom. Tourists flock to an unusual site in the California desert. The Holy Father praises an interfaith meeting looking at the 500th anniversary of the Protestant Reformation.
Parlare di Lutero, cattolici e protestanti insieme per iniziativa di un organismo della Santa Sede.
Pope Francis asked participants to pray for reconciliation and unity, adding he's glad the event has given scholars an opportunity to study together. Martin Luther presented his 95 Theses in 1517, breaking away from the Catholic Church. Since 2007, the State Department has been recognizing women from around the world with the International Women of Courage Award. It honors women who advocate for human rights, oftentimes at their own risk. This year, they awarded 13 women. Joining us now is one of the award winners, Sister Caroline Tahan, or Sister Carol as she's known, and we want to welcome Rania Hajazin, our translator, for the interview as well. So Rania, the first question I want to ask her is to tell us about the programs that Sister Carol has founded in Syria.
سيستر كارول، ما هي البرامج اللي بدأتيها في سوريا؟
بدينا برامج أول شيء أنا بشتغل بمجال مع UNHCR.
I work closely with the UNHCR
تعليم مهنة الخياطة للنساء.
to teach women the skill of sewing.
طبعا هذا ببرنامج مدته سنة.
That's in a program that's been going on for about a year.
بالنهاية كمان كل ست بتحصل على مكنة خياطة حتى تبدأ شغلها.
And at the end of the program, each woman receives a sewing machine upon graduation to start her new profession.
هيك نحن بنمنح فرصة عمل لكل ست بتدخل لبيتنا.
And that way we can provide each woman a work opportunity that would allow her every woman that comes into our home a work opportunity for the future.
كمان أنا مديرة مدرسة.
I'm also a principal of a school.
في عنا 200 ولد.
We have 200 children.
بفوتوا لعنا مع المدرسة طبعا إسلام ومسيحية.
Who come to our school. They are both Muslim and Christian children.
كمان نحن بنحاول كمان ندمج معهم أطفال متضررين من الحرب.
We also try to incorporate into this group children who have been traumatized by the war.
So what's interesting, Sister Carol, is how you stay strong in such a war-torn region. How do you do that spiritually?
Sister Carol, كيف بتحافظي على ثباتك الروحي في ظل الصراع في ظل الحرب في بلدك؟
أنا حكم هلأ الرسالة كمان اللي أنا عم بعيشها بحكم احتكاكي مع الناس، بحكم إنه أنا كمان إذا بدي أحكي عن شيء عن إيمان أو عن فرح لازم أعيشه أنا أول شيء قبل ما أنا أحكي للناس.
As a nun who's living out her mission and dealing with people on the front lines and dealing with people face to face, if I'm going to preach something, I must also live it.
نحن لازم نكون وصرنا وعم نقدر نعيش إنه نكون نحن منارة لكل شخص بيجي لعنا بإنه المستقبل اللي راح يجي هو مستقبل حلو.
We must be and we are and we have been a lighthouse to a beacon, a light beacon to everybody that comes to see us, to show them that the future is brilliant.
وكل شخص مكرس ما فيه إلا يقول إنه نحن روحانيتنا روحانية يسوع القائم من بين الأموات.
As a devoted believer, as somebody who's devoted their life, we must say that our devotion is a result of the risen Lord Jesus.
عشان هيك أنا هاي كلمتي أنا بقدر هلأ وصلها إنه نحن السلام رح يجي.
That is my message that I can now tell you, is that peace will come.
يسوع غلب الموت.
Jesus overcame death.
It's such a powerful message, noting that Easter is right around the corner.
رسالتك قوية جدا، خاصة نحن عارفين إنه عيد القيامة جاي علينا.
Sister Carol, you are an inspiration to so many. Thank you for all the work that you do and that your order does.
شكرا سيستر كارول على كل اللي بتعمليه وعلى اللي بيعملوه رهبنة الحوالي.
And know that all of us at EWTN are praying for you.
وأعرفي من فضلك إنه كلنا في هاي المحطة بنصلي إلك.
شكرا.
Thank you. Thank you.
And for the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We hope you have a great weekend. We leave you tonight with a spectacular display in California. Rain caused wildflowers to sprout up in the desert for the first time in years. An estimated 150,000 people have traveled to see the nature display over the past month. The super bloom is expected to last through May. Good night and God bless.